So what's easier, teaching young kids or middle school age children like me?
I prefer teaching middle school age children, but I'm really grateful that there are some teachers who like teaching the younger kids, because obviously we need teachers for every age.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies in their diapers, welcome to the Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.
That's me, Tiberius.
And welcome to the Tiberius Show today. And I'm your host, Tiberius Boy. And as always, we're looking at various jobs and how they affect the world around us. Today's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk to my civics teacher. Well, do you have any idea what civics is? Well, neither did I until she taught me. But let me introduce the next guest. The one, the only, the amazing Christy Bartel. No, not Cartel. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you are a civics teacher at the Christ School. Well, can you explain to us exactly what is civics?
Yeah, it is basically government and politics. We don't talk a lot about like contemporary politics. We're mostly focusing on how government works. So like the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, legislative branch, executive branch, all that.
So yeah, no politicians. This is not becoming a political show. So what made you interested in becoming a school teacher?
Well, I've been teaching for a long time, like since I was 12. I started helping my mom with her kids' acting classes, and I really enjoyed it. But I didn't really think about making it a career until I was in college, and I had an internship. I was teaching Russian students online through Education USA Russia, and I just had an amazing time with that, and was like, I want to get my master's in education and become a teacher.
So why did you decide to teach civics?
Well, it's included in social studies. So if you're a social studies teacher, you get to teach history, and then on the side, you have to teach a civics class. So I don't get me wrong, I do love civics, but my heart is mostly with like U.S. history, world history, European history. So right now I'm teaching civics and world history.
So why is civics important for kids to learn?
Well, someday you're going to grow up and you're going to be old enough to vote, and you need to know what a Republican is and what a Democrat is, and you need to know how the Electoral College works, and you need to know who's a senator and what is a senator, and it's just all
senior senator, yeah.
Yeah, it's important to be a good citizen to know how the government works.
Yeah, I'm going to vote in 5 years. It's weird.
Wow, you're old.
Well, I work on the production team of a show called Third Side Convo that talks about political issues and how different people want to solve them. Well, is that kind of like civics, but more in past tense?
Talks about how political issues and different people want to solve them. Yeah, civics is, I would say, like how the system part works. So it's talking about like once people are elected in, what they're working on, and like what kind of committees they're in, and what branch of what chamber of Congress they're in, like House of Representatives or the Senate, or so I would say it's mostly about structure.
So what other subjects have you taught before?
Well, I started out with acting, and then I helped teach ballet, which was really fun, like plie, first position, all that. I also helped teach debate and speeches, and then I helped teach literature to those Russian students, so I wasn't exactly teaching them English because a lot of them were already good at it. And then I was a teacher's assistant in college for a New Testament class, and then I taught pre-algebra and algebra, and then I taught civics, and then a little bit of U.S. history, and now world history, so a lot of different things. And
Yeah, last year was weird.
last year I taught a lot of different things as a
Yes,
long-term
you
sub.
did. I remember you signed my yearbook, like 3 different, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite subject to teach and why?
Oh, I have really been enjoying teaching world history because, I mean, all growing up, even before I knew I wanted to be a teacher, I knew that I absolutely loved history. And I loved gushing about it to people. And now being a teacher, like, they have to listen to me talk about it. I definitely think world history is my favorite subject because it covers other subjects too, like science. And I mean, we were learning about Euclid, who basically invented math and geometry, right? So I get to talk about all sorts of other subjects too, not just history itself.
So what's the best part about being a school teacher?
Oh gosh, I love getting student questions. So I love seeing when students are really curious about something. I have a very... It's kind of like a seminar style the first couple days of the week where we're reading through a text, and basically I let the students ask me any question that pops into their head, and it's really fun to see, like, will I know the answer? And oftentimes I do, just because, like, when I was 12 I went on a Wikipedia rabbit hole trail and it like came back a few years later where I'm like, oh, I do know the answer to that. So I think that's my favorite part of teaching at the beginning of the week, just kind of like having them get answers to their crazy questions that maybe they wouldn't immediately be able to Google. And so I feel like I'm helpful. Maybe more helpful than Google, which is nice.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, do you think remote learning is better than being in the classroom?
Oh, that's so tough because I was a student for both and a teacher for both. In general, I would say classroom is better because you can get like immediate feedback. But like when I was in high school, I was actually homeschooled. And I really liked the independence of being able to like just get ahead if I wanted to and just focus on the subjects that I wanted to. So I think that's the plus side. But I think for students who really need like extra guidance, that definitely being in the classroom, it's easier on the teacher and it's easier on the student to do that.
So what's easier, teaching young kids or middle school age children like me?
I prefer teaching middle school age children. But I'm really grateful that there are some teachers who like teaching the younger kids because obviously we need teachers for every age. But I like being able to be more of myself with the middle schoolers. I always felt like I was kind of putting on a show for like second graders or third graders, or especially kindergartners, where I'd have to talk super high like this and say friends. But with middle schoolers, I can just say like, look at the board. Like, that's what we're doing today. Don't ask me what we're doing today. Look at the board, you know. And I try to be kind about it, but I don't have to put on a show.
That's
you know?
true. So what is one thing you think kids should know about being a school teacher?
That it's harder than they think it is. I think that they think that because they're the ones doing the homework that they are doing the harder stuff.
Now, see, the one part that they probably don't realize is that you have to grade the homework.
I have to grade the homework, but I also had to create the assignment in the first place.
That's true.
So I think when I was a student, I just assumed that teachers are always given like pre-made curriculum. But even though I have a curriculum for world history, I'm still making the assignments. I'm putting them into Canvas. And while it's a job I absolutely love, I think it is harder than students expect.
Well, here's like a good time to take a quick commercial break. Let's hear a word from our sponsors.
So you want to make an ad for your company, right?
Yeah, Tiberius, you want to help me?
Okay, so what's the name of the company?
PPWND.
PP what?
Professional Pressure Washing and Detailing.
So you like clean driveways?
Yeah, like that. We pressure wash commercial buildings and semi-truck and trailers.
So how would someone get a hold of you?
They can visit my site at ppwnd.com or call me at 407-900-7793.
So I just tell them to call you at 407-900-7793 or visit ppwnd.com?
Yeah, Tiberius, you got it.
Cut! That's a wrap! Just use that.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range, great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
And we're back here talking with Christy Bartel, a civics teacher at the Christ School that also teaches board games. Okay, so you're my teacher, and you teach the strategy games lesson that I took last year. But what do you think kids learn from strategy games?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I forgot I taught too. There's just so many things. What do you think kids learn from strategy games? Strategy, for one. I think the fun part about that class is learning that a game you might not have really thought about as a strategy game is actually a strategy game.
Like Uno.
So, like Uno, for sure. Because, like, for the most part, you think that it's up to chance, and a decent amount of it is, but there are certainly strategies that you can utilize to do better most of the time. And I think, too, that it's important to learn that there are different types of strategy games. So obviously there are card games, and then there's chess, which is like the main strategy game you think of. But I really like the ones that have like tiles, like Settlers of Catan and like Ticket to Ride and that kind of stuff. But
The Game of Life too. That one's
yeah,
like the
life.
strategy games.
Yeah.
Well, I go to board game parties and play a lot of social deduction games. Which type of strategy games do you think help develop the minds better?
Yeah, probably the social deduction games. If you're talking about like Mafia and Blood on the Clock Tower, right? Yeah, those are, oh my gosh, those are so complicated. I also go to board game nights like that, and we play Blood on the Clock Tower, and my friends are all engineers and nerds, and I have no chance. The only way that I'm going to win is if I'm on a team with like a specific girl, and if I'm on the opposite side, she just... It's a blood bath. Really, really bad.
So do you play board games at home or just at school?
So like I said, I do, my friend group does like a Blood on the Clock Tower night. And I have a friend who really, really likes board games, and she gets like the really complicated ones like Terraforming Mars and Wingspan. But you know what? I've never actually played Wingspan. I've played the dragon version, which is Wormspan, and it is so cool.
That one's a fun one.
And it was really funny because she's like, Christy, I know that you don't like super, super complicated board games, but you'll like this one because it has dragons and it has little eggs. And I was like, I can collect the little eggs? And she's like, yes, yes, you can.
So what's your favorite type of board game? Like deck building, push your luck, worker placement, deduction games?
I don't know what you would categorize this as, but I really like Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride.
Worker placement.
Okay, I like games that have
Sort of, kind of.
little pieces.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what would you call Terraforming Mars?
Deck building for sure.
Really? You sure?
Deck
Okay.
building and worker placement.
It also has
both
the
of
little
those.
cubes though, and I like collecting cubes. I think you can maybe see the pattern in my gameplay.
Still deck building because you have the cards in your hand and stuff.
Yeah.
I love Terraforming Mars. But do you enjoy board games even when you lose?
Oh, it depends. Like if it was a good game, then sure. But like there are times when someone will come up at the very end and it's like, really? And they're like, well, actually, I was like saving up all these cards until the very, and I'm like, oh my gosh, really?
Actually.
So it's 50-50, I would say.
Yeah. Well, what's the hardest part about being a middle school teacher?
Oh gosh. Classroom management is difficult. I think I'm getting better at it, but I think the hardest part is it's like a lot of the times I really enjoy what the students are doing, and like they are, even when they're not on task, they're doing something creative, like maybe they're drawing or they're chatting with a friend and they're having a good time, and it's like, oh, they shouldn't be. So I don't like love trying to bring them back in, but it also is just an issue of like respect. So it's like, hey, I know that you're having this great conversation, but I'm not talking for my own pleasure.
I like how you call it a great conversation.
Yeah, you're having an amazing conversation. Most of the time they're not. But like so I'm up here talking, and it's not just cuz
it kind of puts you down, you know.
Yeah.
So, what
take
should
it
a
personally.
kid listening right now do to prepare if they want to grow up and be a school teacher? Or just listen in general?
Well, I got some really good advice when I was in college, and it was not even to like major in education as an undergrad student, so like for your bachelor's, to just really focus in on what you want to teach and learn more about it, and then focus on learning the teaching skills, which are very important. Definitely take teaching classes because it's not as easy as you think. But yeah, is the idea that you want to get really, really good at what you're teaching so that when students have those kind of out of the box questions, you can engage with that and you can boost their curiosity by actually having an answer to the weird question that they have. So that'd probably be my advice.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the most misunderstood part about the teaching profession?
Well, I've mentioned that it's harder than you think. And I mean, I think a lot of people know this, but teachers do a lot of work at home. Because if you think about it, we are working and we're teaching the whole day, and we have like I have an hour and a half for planning, which mostly just ends up me being like cleaning up the classroom a little bit,
Or just walking around.
grading. No, I don't just walk around. There are meetings. I need to eat lunch in there somewhere. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hours that I will take work home. And part of that is I'm a pretty new teacher, so I'm hoping that reduces. But I think that's kind of a misunderstood part.
Yeah, you won't have me next year, so you won't have someone to talk to.
Good riddance. What? I didn't say anything.
Well, have you ever had to like turn down a subject that you just thought there's no way I can teach that?
Well, I almost turned down like the pre-algebra algebra spot just because, I mean,
That would have made it harder on them.
while I was okay at math, it was definitely an area because I was homeschooled. So a lot of the time I was like trying to teach myself.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really confident in how well I had done that for several of the subjects. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And so I'm glad I did say yes to doing it. I have had to say no to teaching like Spanish, for example. Like I'm okay at Spanish, but I definitely think that a native speaker who has like language training would be better. Like, because there are times where I'm like, that could be an estar or that could be a ser, and I don't know. And I want to be able to know when a student has a question like that.
So who can you say was the person that would drive your passion the most?
My passion for teaching or history or both. Any? Okay. Well, my parents for sure. My mom is an acting teacher, and I just loved the way that she taught. She was more like a coach, you know, like would encourage you a lot. And I really liked how sweet she was when she did that, but she would also like have control of the class. And then my dad, he is a history nut for sure. He doesn't actually, like, his job is completely different from that. He's actually a hospital chaplain, but when he was getting his bachelor's, he was like one of the 7 people in the history department. So we'd go in museums, and he would know more than the plaques did. So I didn't even read the plaques. I would just listen to him talk about the stuff. And I always wanted to be that kind of person who knew more than the plaques in museums.
The plaques did.
And like people would take me on trips so that I could be their like history guide.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No, that was my goal. So I would say my parents in different ways. Like my mom, the teaching side, and my dad was the history side.
Yeah. So what was the best advice that you've ever received, and who gave you that advice?
Just advice.
Good question.
I know. Very good questions. I'm very, very proud of you. Good advice. I've gotten a lot of it, I promise.
Vertical, horizontal.
Okay.
Remember the pencil.
Yeah.
Parabolas.
Right. Yeah, well, that's advice I gave you, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess, you know, since we're talking about teaching, I would say I was really wondering, should I go and teach in like a third world country? Like, would that bring more glory to God than staying in the United States? And I had a teacher who said, if that's something you really, really want to do, go ahead and do that. But, you know, like students here in the United States, they need a great teacher. Like private school students who maybe have really great backgrounds and comfortable lifestyles, like they still need a great teacher. So wherever God has decided to put you, that's like where you should be. And I was like, you know what? You're so right. Like, and there are teachers who really are amazing, and they serve inner cities or they go abroad. And, but I just really feel like I'm at a good place for me right now, and hopefully someday I'll get to teach abroad. Maybe, who knows? But that was
Maybe
really
you might get to high school and somehow teach me here or something.
right. Yeah, who knows? So I'm just keeping it open. But I just thought that was like a really interesting perspective on like what's important versus what's really not.
Yeah. Okay, so what message do you want to tell children all over the world about working as a teacher?
I think you should do it if it's really something you want to do. So if you aren't really sure, then you probably shouldn't go for it, because it is pretty tough, and you really do need to like kids, and you really do need to like the subject you're teaching, and you need to be willing to put in some extra hours. And so if you don't feel like that natural inclination, then it's going to be really hard. And, you know, it's one of the lower paying jobs, you know. But I think that it's really amazing, and you get to make a lot of really cool relationships, and you get
good friends.
really good friends. Yeah.
Well, on that note, let's take a quick break to pay some bills.
The Tiberius Show would like to thank one of their dedicated sponsors, Custom Designs Orlando. These guys are on Mills Avenue and do all sorts of stuff, ranging from photo ID badges, engraved signs, custom braille ADA signs, vinyl lettering to trophies and awards. The cool part about Custom Designs is they can ship products all over the United States. You can reach them at 407-898-0373 and tell them that
Tiberius
sent you.
Over 40 years, Lighthouse Central Florida has provided education, independent life skills, and job training to thousands of Central Floridians who live with blindness or any degree of vision loss. Whether it's picking out clothes in the morning or just moving around your community and serving Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties, contact Lighthouse Central Florida at 407-898-2483 or visit them online at lighthousecfl.org.
And we're back with Christy Bartel, a middle school teacher at the Christ School. So, what was that one thing that happened in your career that you just did not expect?
Yeah. We've referenced this a couple times, but I did find myself teaching algebra and pre-algebra, and I actually started out at the Christ School as a substitute teacher because I was working on my master's degree, and I wanted a job while I was doing that. And I was sitting in a classroom one day, and the middle school principal walked in and was like, "Hey, Christy," and I was like, "Oh no, what is this about?"
What is this?
And he was like, so would you be interested in being a long-term sub for math? And I was like, you do realize that I went to school for like history and like social studies, right? And he was like, yeah, but we really need your help. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. Because I needed to like call my parents and talk it through with them, because I was like, is this worth it? And later on, I was on recess duty, and he like walked across the green space toward me and was like, have you thought about it yet? And I'm like, I haven't even eaten lunch yet. Like, I haven't had a break to think about it. But that's how desperate they were.
Yeah, they were really desperate.
They were really desperate. And so I said yes, and I'm really glad that I did, because
You met me.
and then it really solidified that it was like middle school age, or at least older students, that I was really interested in. Because back then I was still oscillating between maybe being interested in elementary school, and so this was like, no, I really, really like the middle school age.
Even though you were only there for 1 quarter, still one of the best math teachers that I've ever had.
Thank you for boosting
gave
my
some good
ego.
tips.
I appreciate it.
Especially the pencil tip with the vertical and the horizontal. That was a good one. But do you think teaching at a private school is easier or better than working at like a public school or something?
I don't really know, since I haven't worked at a public school before, and the last time I like attended a public school was like for one period a day in like 8th grade. That was the last time I was in one. I think they have pros and cons, right? So with private schools, you get a little bit more freedom with what you're teaching, but at the same time, there's less structure. So when I'm building my lessons, it's kind of like, whatever you want to do. And I'm like, but what should I want to do? Whereas in public school, like you have it all laid out for you, but sometimes it might be something that you don't really feel like teaching or whatever. And then there's just more bureaucracy with it just because, you know, the government's involved with public school.
Yeah.
So.
But what have you learned about yourself that you wish that you knew earlier?
Ooh. I wish that I knew that I was interested in teaching middle school. I wasn't sure. And I don't necessarily wish I knew that earlier because I did figure it out. And so I think the timeline was just fine. Like I didn't learn it too late or something. But it's just crazy to me that I didn't know that already. Like I really cannot imagine myself being a kindergarten teacher at this point. Like they are so cute. But I want to go into like super deep detail and everything. And that's just not something that you can do with kindergartners. And so you need to be willing to like not go on the tangents because they're not going to understand it.
Like, huh? What do you say? But if you could change anything to make your job easier or better, what would it be?
I wish that all of the assignments were already in Canvas and that I didn't need to spend time every week in putting them into Canvas. And I wish that the due dates would just like show up in there. And I don't mind the grading part because the grading part helps me know where my students are. And so that part I don't want to get rid of. Yeah. But the prep part, like the it's monotonous stuff, that's what I would get rid of.
But what was the biggest mistake that you've ever made, and how did it change as a person?
Ooh, yeah. So there have been several times where I've said something that I didn't mean as like an insult, or I didn't mean to be perceived the way it was. And it's just hard because I mean, teaching you're talking for, let's see, I've got 42 minutes and 5 periods. I don't want to do the math. Anyway, several hours every day. And so the chances are, statistically, you will say something that is perceived in an incorrect way. And
210 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. I am a people pleaser, right? And I want everyone to know that I really care about them and that they're loved. And so when something goes wrong like that, I feel awful and I try not to cry about it, but it's like, oh no, I can't believe they thought that I wanted to be mean to them. So that's the hard part of that.
Okay. Now can you tell me that one story, remember, this is the kid show, but that one story, well, that you're not supposed to tell me about. Come on. You can tell me.
An embarrassing story about teaching. Or anything. An embarrassing story that just like happened to me.
Yeah, like maybe you went bowling and you fell over.
Well, I fall over often. Let's see, an embarrassing story. Well, I got the stomach flu in Egypt. That was kind of embarrassing. I studied abroad in the Middle East for 3.5 months, and I definitely use pictures from that time in my world history class. So I get to say, look, here's me inside the pyramids. And so that's not an embarrassing story. But yeah, it was embarrassing because at the very end of the trip, I was completely bedridden like a Victorian child.
Oh, wow.
And then we had to get on a plane. And I still couldn't drink water or hold anything in my stomach besides oh gosh, what is it? It's not
Yogurt?
Fruit Loops. It's Cheerios. I was clutching a bag of Cheerios for dear life, and it was my 21st birthday.
It's like oh.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you think my listeners should know about you and what you do?
I really like to write. I creative write. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of how I got interested in history, to be honest with you. Like I read some historical fiction novels and really made it come to life. And so I really like to write historical fiction. I don't think they'll ever see the light of day, but it makes researching a lot more fun because you're like, ooh, I'm going to research what people used to wear. And then I'll like put my characters in those outfits. Right. And so then it helps me remember Like,
Yeah.
so the novel I've been working on for like the past 10 years or something is set in the 1850s and 60s. So you could ask me anything about those decades in the West, and I would probably be able to answer you.
Was there normally playing cards in the cowboy hats? You don't have to answer it.
They had playing cards. I don't.
Do they like put it in the hats for like styling? I see a lot of people do
like
it.
in the
yeah. Like the Joker card.
You know what?
King
I wouldn't
card.
put it past them in the Wild West, but that was probably more like in the like 70s or 80s, the 1870s or 80s, to clarify.
Yeah. So, do you have a Facebook or a website for my listeners who want to follow you?
Nope. Nope.
No Instagram.
No, I'm a
no-
teacher. I don't want my students following me, so I'm all private on there. Sorry, but maybe one day my historical
Maybe.
fiction novel will come out and it'll be published and it'll be Christy Bartel and
Then you'll have to have.
yeah, and then I'll get a website and then you can follow me. So look up my name and see if there's a website.
Well, what is that one question that you think I forgot to ask you?
What is the one question? What is my favorite historical time period?
What is it?
Probably the 1800s, just in general. The long century, which starts at the beginning of the French Revolution and goes to the start of World War I. So actually, technically, 1789 to 1914. I think it would be cool to live back then, but mostly I like writing about it and learning about it.
Nice.
Not the Middle Ages. Woof.
Well, thank you, Christy Bartel, for being my special guest. Can you stick around for Math Corners?
Of course.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call your computer solutions today and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad, my computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling your computer solutions at 407-826-0810.
Tiberius' favorite subject, it's Math Corners!
And now it's time for Math Corners. Thank you, Christy, for helping me with Math Corners. And this week, we're going to do some more multi-step word problems. My dad is always going to find new problems for me to solve. And today, we're going to talk about grades.
I don't know anything about that.
Sure. So, Mrs. Chen, a 7th grade math teacher, is calculating final grades for her class. Each student's final grade is based on 3 parts: quizzes, a project, and a final exam. Quizzes are worth 40% of the final grade. The project is worth 30% of the final grade, and the final exam is worth 30% of the final grade.
That's
One of
tough.
her students, Alex, has the following scores: quizzes 85%, project 92%, and final exam 78%. Mrs. Chen wants to know Alex's final grade.
Just let Canvas do it for you.
Okay, well, we gotta explain it.
Canvas
So-
calculates it. I don't.
Well, first is a real-world problem because, well, everyone needs to know what their final grade is. How do we know if they passed? Canvas,
Yeah.
But first, if they did the percentages and divide them by 100 to get their weight. So now that's going to be easy since they're even percentages. So it's 0.4, 0.3, and 0.3. Yes, 40, 30, 30. So this is going to be a breeze because next you have to find the weighted score for each category for Alex. Quizzes are 85 times 0.4. Oh, that's going to take a minute. 34. Now project was 92 times 0.3, and that's... Oh, this is harder. Is there a decimal? It's 27.6. Well, there's a final exam, which, ouch, it's a 78 times 0.3, but there's more decimals, and it's 23.4. So now guess what? We're not done yet, though. We have to add them all together, and that's 27.6 plus 23.4, and I got this, that's 51. And that one was easier than I thought. Now you have to add the 34, and you get 85. So Alex's final grade is an 85, or a B.
Very respectable. Yeah.
So, Christy, do you ever have to grade your students' work like this, or does the computer do all the work for you?
No, fortunately, if you put in those weights, like you put in the 30% and you put in the 40%.
80-20.
Yeah, or 80-20 in the case of some classes, then it will calculate it for you. But if I didn't know how the percentages worked, then I wouldn't know why I'm putting it in. So fortunately, I have had to do percentage problems like this.
Really?
Yes, back in the day.
Back in the day. Well, my teachers, including you, say that I would use math every day. Now's the time to prove it. So how do you use math with your work?
Well,
Other than teaching math.
Okay.
That was a loophole that I thought of.
Well, I have to calculate the grade that students are allowed to retake stuff. So, for example, if a quiz is 18 questions, then I let them retake it if they got a 14 or lower, because that means they didn't get an A or a B. So I let students have one retake if they get a C or lower.
Why
and so
do that
I needed to do math in order to figure out what number that would be.
Well, thank you so much, Christy, for your help with Math Corners. And now it's time for the Heart of a Lion. As you know, we talk about the qualities of living by the heart of a lion, which stands for leadership, integrity, obedience, and ability. This week we're going to talk about obedience. For me, I think obedience is being fully committed to doing what is pleasing to God. The qualities of obedience are compliance with a good attitude and respect for the laws. You know when someone is obedient when they follow instructions willingly and thoroughly. Now, my dad and I drive on Orange Blossom Trail a lot. I mean, they've installed a lot of crosswalk on that road and overhead lights to let you know when someone wants to walk across. The county's been using it for traffic control and making it red even when no one's walking. This is not good. Because of this, a lot of people run through the crosswalk anyway since there's no one trying to get across. My dad always stops anyway. He's a good man. It can be annoying to see my dad stop and everyone else blowing through it, but the other day he stopped and other cars kept going and almost hit someone because this time it was a real person trying to cross. Now my dad put his arm out the window so that the other cars would stop and let them by. So the cars passing by is an example of people not having obedience, and it could be very dangerous. So, Christy, I bet you always stop at crosswalks when people are around, right?
Yeah, and there's actually an Orange Blossom Trail crossing that I'm thinking about right now. And the other day, I was the only one who stopped there, and there were other people like coming, and the person was like making eye contact with me, like, I wonder when I'll get to cross. And I was like, I got you, man. You'll get to cross soon.
Yeah. So, Christy, of all of the Heart of Lion virtues, which is the one that you see the most?
Okay, there's leadership, integrity, obedience, and nobility.
School mantra.
Yeah. I don't know which I see most, but I really like when students have integrity in that they, like, if I tell them to tuck in their shirt, because, you know, you've got a uniform.
I thought it was going to be obedience.
Well, I don't see that as often. I mean, when they're paying attention, that's fantastic. But integrity goes like a little bit further than that, like where I know that they tuck in their shirt and they keep it in even when they leave the classroom. Because sometimes I see people kind of untuck it when they don't think I'm looking, but I am looking, and that's not integrity. So
don't look at me like that.
It can be obedience, but I think that the fact that you're doing something when no one is watching, that's integrity.
Yeah. We should always try to be lion strong in everything we do, shouldn't we?
Yes, we should.
And that's our show, folks. I want to thank the one, the only, the amazing Christy Bartel for being on my show. It has been so much fun talking to you today. I think we learned a lot about your work as a civics teacher and even some games.
Thank you so much for having me. And we did remember I do have one social media thing that's open, and that is my LinkedIn. So Christy Bartel, and you can scroll and see how many different things I've taught on there.
Also, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Tiberius Show. And I would like to thank WWPR 1490 AM, K1998, Soul Radio 24/7, EasyWay TV, and all of the other stations that air on my show. Now, please be sure to visit The Tiberius Show on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Christy, are you subscribed yet?
I will be in 5 minutes.
Oh, and be sure to leave me a comment if you want to work as a teacher. I answer all the comments myself. Also, be sure to watch next on The Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.